Next week is my son's birthday, and I'd like to order a cake for 20 people, Emily said. Hearing this, I fell silent. 20 servings isn't a typical request, but she must have known I couldn't refuse. Understood, I muttered softly. Emily smirked unpleasantly, but I was determined to have the last laugh. I clenched my fists, resolute not to let her have her way. My name is Rothy. I'm a regular housewife who works part-time at a local supermarket. My only son, Nicholas, graduated from college and found a job at a nearby company. We are a happy family living together harmoniously. However, there's one unpleasant person at my part-time job, Emily. Emily's father, Christopher, is an executive at the supermarket. She transferred here from a different company about 2 years ago. Despite being a full-time employee hired mid-career, us part-timers, including me, have been here longer. From the beginning, Emily has been arrogant, ignoring advice and guidance. Both the staff and part-timers are at their wits' end. About a year ago, a part-timer named Rachel confronted her. Emily, even if your dad's an executive, you're just an employee here. We part-timers are your seniors. You should speak respectfully and listen to our advice. I thought Rachel was amazing for saying what no one else would. However, soon after, Rachel was transferred to a location too far for her to commute, forcing her to resign. Everyone thought it was Emily's doing, but nobody dared to say it out loud. Since then, no one has opposed her. The supermarket where I've worked for a long time is more than just a job. It's a cherished place where I belong. I often hang out with my part-time colleagues, and apart from Emily, we have good relationships. Then one day, as I continued to work, hoping for these happy days to last, something happened. Mom, I'm thinking of getting married, Nicholas announced. My husband Dylan and I were overjoyed. Truth be told, I always wanted a daughter to go shopping with, have tea with, and share a mother-daughter relationship. But after Nicholas, we weren't blessed with more children, so that dream remained unfulfilled. I hoped that by getting along with Nicholas's wife, I could build such a relationship. What's she like? I eagerly asked. Nicholas seemed happy. She's a very kind girl. Her parents seem well established, like she comes from a good family. I'm still a bit worried if I'm good enough for her. That's wonderful. I'm excited to meet her, I replied. Her name is Emily, Nicholas continued. He often talked about her, saying Emily this and Emily that. She apparently attends cooking classes and is good at cooking. She seems to like sweets too. Hearing Nicholas talk about her made me happy. A week after Nicholas's news on the weekend, she was coming over to meet us. She arranged it to match my day off. Not being as skilled in cooking to impress someone who excels at it, I ordered pizza and prepared a cake for that day. Dylan and I waited at home for Nicholas to bring her over. Then the long-awaited doorbell rang. She's here, I announced, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. I rushed from the living room to the front door. We're back. Emily, this is Mom, Nicholas said. As I turned to the woman beside him, I froze in shock. Nice to meet you, I'm Emily. Hi, Emily. Right before me stood Emily, the very source of my troubles at my part-time supermarket job. You know my mom? Nicholas asked. I had no idea Nicholas's mom was you. Emily seemed equally surprised. Come in for now, please, I said, still shaken, inviting them inside. Leaving me at the entrance, Nicholas led Emily to the living room. Hearing them talk with Dylan, I took a deep breath to calm myself. They had met at university. Emily is 2 years older than Nicholas. They were introduced by an acquaintance and reconnected about a year ago, eventually starting to date. I was surprised to learn your part-time job was at my workplace. You said you were in administration, so I thought you worked at a law office near the supermarket, Nicholas said, laughing nonchalantly, unaware of where his girlfriend worked. Indeed, Emily had graduated from law school and used to work at a law firm. Nicholas must have assumed she continued working at a law office and never asked explicitly. We chatted around the pizza, the conversation mingling with the unexpected reality of our new connection. I could only force a smile, unable to accept the reality and wishing it was just a dream. I'm truly surprised to think you're Rothy's son. I've been under your mom's care at work, Emily said, feigning innocence as if she treated us part-timers as anything but slaves. That's not true. I'm sure everyone's grateful for someone like you. Mom always says she enjoys her job and that there are nice people at the supermarket, Nicholas said. That's nice to hear, I replied, though I never intended to include Emily in that group of good people. Naturally, I couldn't say such a thing. so I stood up. I'll go prepare the dessert. Emily, would you like coffee or tea? I wanted to be alone, my heart racing. I needed to calm down quickly. I'll help, Emily, she said suddenly, standing up, an unusual gesture from her considering our part-time job. It's okay, you're a guest. Please sit down, I insisted, but Emily walked to the kitchen. Dylan and Nicholas watched with smiles, so I sighed quietly. However, Emily didn't miss a beat. It's really surprising to think you'll be my mother-in-law. Yes, that's right. It will be easier to get along. Looking forward to it. What did she mean by that? I had a bad feeling about those words, but I tried to keep her. Her smile was a sneer, always displaying contempt towards me at work. Just so you know, don't say anything unnecessary to Nicholas. Her words wiped the smile from my face. Emily knew. She knew she was disliked by us part-timers simply because I happened to be Nicholas's mom. She must have been planning to do whatever she wanted, using Christopher and Nicholas as shields. I turned pale, frightened by her, fearing she would destroy our happy days. Emily eventually left the kitchen without helping. That must have been her purpose for coming here. What about the preparation? Nicholas's voice interrupted. Emily replied curtly. I returned cheerily, not wanting to be in the way, so I came back. I told Nicholas, won't you reconsider the marriage? But my words would undoubtedly make my son dislike me. Don't interfere with Nicholas's marriage, even Dylan scolded me. So I just watched the two of them. Still, they seemed to have a good marriage, and Nicholas looked happy. A month after the marriage, I found out Emily was pregnant. Although it was complicated, I was also happy. Nicholas and Emily built a house next to ours, a separate household from Nicholas's. Dylan told me you should be a little more considerate, but knowing Emily's true nature, I wanted to avoid her. Still, I loved my grandson. His name was Ethan, a lively boy I rarely saw, but I looked forward to hearing his healthy cries. However, about 6 months after he was born, there was a day when his crying could be heard all day long. I finally rang the neighbor's doorbell. What is it? I said. Hello. Probably because I was the one who called out. Emily, who seemed to have been asleep, came to the door. Knowing it was me, I was worried because Ethan had been crying non-stop. Is everything okay? I simply stated the reason, but Emily looked annoyed. Are you saying I'm neglecting Ethan? She retorted sharply. No, that's not what I'm saying. I was just worried. If you're tired, I can wash him or help in any way, I hastily offered. But Emily didn't seem to hear. Dealing with modern kids is difficult, she muttered dismissively. In the end, I was turned away, and Ethan kept crying. A few days later, Emily came to our house with Ethan in her arms. Rafi, could you watch Ethan for a bit? She asked unexpectedly. Yes, of course, I replied, surprised by the sudden change in attitude. What's this about? I tried to understand the situation, but Emily left Ethan and his things at our house and departed. Oh, Ethan's here, Dylan noticed from the entrance, happily taking Ethan from my hands and heading to the living room. I followed Dylan, carrying Ethan's belongings. Since then, Emily started leaving Ethan with us frequently from morning till night. It was like running a daycare alongside my part-time job. Emily was on parental. I did agree to watch him, but there's a limit. I talked to Dylan and Nicholas about it, but they don't seem to take it seriously. Eventually, I had to take time off work or ask Dylan to watch Ethan briefly so I could rush to and from work. However, interfering too much and upsetting Emily would be troublesome. Despite the difficulty, I enjoy and cherish my time with Ethan. Dylan also looks forward to Ethan's daily visits. Busy but happy, the three of us spent enjoyable times together. Half a year later, Ethan's first birthday was approaching, and I was pondering what to give him as his first present. In the past, birthdays meant inviting relatives for celebrations, but there was no invitation from Nicholas or Emily. They must be planning a modest family celebration. While looking at my phone and thinking this, I received a call. It's Emily. What could it be? I answered the phone suspiciously, as Emily usually didn't contact me. Hello, Rafi. As you probably know, next week is my son's birthday, so I'd like a cake for 20. People were surprised by this sudden request. I was at a loss for words. What do you mean? I managed to ask. Just what I said. We're inviting relatives for a celebration, so I'm asking for the cake. I plan to serve a meal, so I can't manage the cake too. Plus, I thought I'd give you a chance to show off. Aren't I kind? Emily's words filled my mind with question marks. We weren't even invited to the celebration, and a cake for 20 people is not something a regular person would request. Emily's relatives, aunts and uncles will be among the about 20 guests. Surely my employer at the supermarket and Emily's father-in-law, Christopher, will be there too, I thought, trying to make sense of the situation. I already told Dad that you will make the cake. It's a chance to show your good side. Who knows? You might get promoted to a full-time position, Emily said mockingly. I don't aspire to be a full-time employee, I replied quietly. As a part-timer, I shouldn't worry so much, but I couldn't forget Rachel, who was driven to resign. I told myself I must avoid being pushed into quitting. Emily's words are like knowing I couldn't refuse, knowing she was exploiting my weakness. Cakes are easy. I'm more experienced in cooking, so I'll give advice, she said presumptuously, more than I had anticipated. Reluctantly, I agreed. All right, but with 20 people, maybe you should reconsider serving individual portions or using a large platter, I suggested. Ha! I'm the senior here. I'm not asking for advice. And what do you mean, okay? Can't you speak more respectfully? Emily retorted sharply. What kind of person is she? I held back my words, muttering quietly, understood. I could imagine Emily's smirking face on the other end of the phone, my frustration seeping through. She probably planned to ridicule me by presenting her perfect full course alongside my poor cake. But I wouldn't let that happen. I made a decision. Of course, Ethan was the star. I wanted to make his first birthday memorable, even though he wouldn't remember it. I started planning the cake design and went to a baking supply store for ingredients. Though I felt forced, I was also excited. Emily seemed annoyed by my amateur excitement. It won't amount to much. You should have asked me, the senior, for advice, she said when she came over to scoff. But I had no time for that. Later, Dylan and I were officially invited to the birthday. On the day, Dylan, with nothing else to do, left early for their house. It's too early, I said, but he was too excited. I sent him off with a smile and got up, ready to prepare. I muttered, checking the time, when the doorbell rang. Rothy, are you ready? Emily started entering without permission. She frowned upon seeing me relaxed. What, you were sitting? Where's the cake? I was about to start. Don't worry, I'll bring it on time, I assured her. It was only 8:00 a.m., 4 hours until everyone arrived, but Emily was shocked. An amateur can't make a cake for 20 people in 4 hours, she ranted. I've been preparing perfect dishes since 4:00 a.m. Don't ruin the event. Okay, I get it. It's Ethan's birthday. I wouldn't do that, I snapped back, making her frown even more. Just make sure to bring the cake by 12:00 p.m. She left, snorting. Was she bragging about finishing her part? I laughed at her frustration, doing nothing until the door closed. Then, I started. I brought the genoise from another room to the kitchen. A cake for 20 people can't be baked in a home oven, so I had borrowed a friend's oven to bake the large dough. I decorated it with prepared cream and fruits, made Ethan's favorite cars from cookie dough, and by 11:00 a.m., I was satisfied with the finished cake. I hurriedly finished and called Nicholas to safely transport the cake. I left it in a cool place and headed to the room where everyone was gathering, the largest room in Nicholas's house. They planned to eventually build a wall here to divide the room and turn it into a children's room. It was a good opportunity for such an event, as we hadn't celebrated the new house with relatives before. Ethan, unsettled by the crowd, was crying with Nicholas holding him. Everyone smiled at little Ethan's discomfort. Then Emily, with her mother-in-law Olivia's help, proudly brought in her dishes. Here's the appetizer assortment, she announced, placing small plates in front of each guest. The presentation was indeed beautiful and well-crafted. However, by the time she finished serving everyone, the first plates needed clearing. Ethan was still crying, and Emily and Olivia were busy. I stood to help, but Christopher said, "You should sit, Rothy. We're supposed to be the guests." Indeed, I agreed and sat back down, but the situation looked tough. I took Ethan from Nicholas and suggested he help Emily. As soon as I held Ethan, he became happy and started laughing. Everyone was charmed by this, but Emily looked displeased. She couldn't treat me like a pawn anymore, especially after hearing Christopher's earlier words. Christopher had been attentive, asking me about my job and Emily. I couldn't tell him everything, but our conversation brought up Rachel, who had been forced to resign. Did he really do that? He didn't seem like such a person. The dishes served at intervals of 10 minutes each were somehow completed. but judging by the relatives' reactions, it didn't seem they were fully satisfied. No matter how confident Emily was in her cooking, she should have considered serving family-style dishes given the guests and situation. All the dishes are served. Did everyone enjoy them? Emily said this with a happy expression. It seemed she was the most. Olivia next to her hadn't eaten anything and looked distressed, which was pitiable. Rothy has made Ethan's cake. It's ready, right? Emily turned to me. Yes, I'll bring it, I replied. I asked Nicholas for help and brought in the large cake. Emily's nieces and nephews gathered around the big box. Dylan held Ethan, who didn't show interest yet, but the adults were curious about the large cake box. Here it is. Nicholas and I opened the box. Cheers erupted at the sight of the cake we revealed. The children's genuine reactions were delightful, and I couldn't help but smile. The relatives were impressed, asking, "Did you really make this?" They took pictures. However, Emily, in a voice that cut through the calm atmosphere, exclaimed loudly, "What? You said you'd make it, not buy it. I wanted a unique cake for Ethan." She must have been tired and hungry. Her anger peaked with everyone's positive response to my cake. I did make it. Lies, you weren't doing anything this morning. The genoise was already baked, and the decoration was ready, Emily insisted, surprised. Genoise. It's a type of sponge cake. I've always called it that. I smiled at Emily. Ha, Christopher laughed. Then Dylan explained, "Actually, my wife used to be a pastry chef. I couldn't bake a cake for 20 people in our oven, so I asked a friend to borrow theirs and baked it yesterday." When I said that, Emily's face fell. She must have been upset, her plans having gone awry. It was fun to bake such a large cake after a long time. Thank you for the opportunity, Emily. Now, let's take pictures with Ethan and the cake, and then we can all enjoy it, I suggested. Seeing everyone's the most gratifying part was seeing everyone smile. Ethan, influenced by everyone's joy, smiled too. The group photo captured Emily's stained face amid everyone else beaming, a moment worth cherishing without any malice. While everyone enjoyed the cake, I held Ethan, who happily ate his own cake made of yogurt cream and banana pancakes. After seeing off the relatives and cleaning up with Olivia, I finally had a moment to relax. Ethan is really attached to you, Rothy, Olivia remarked, watching Ethan in my arms as we all took a coffee break. Nicholas responded, "She always looks after him." I noticed Emily's stunned expression, but before she could react, Christopher intervened. "What do you mean, always? Aren't you on parental leave?" Christopher's question caught Emily off guard. "Well, not always, just occasionally, like when I go to the hospital," Emily replied sheepishly. I gave a wry smile, unable to say anything. Nicholas realized his slip-up and looked uneasy. Christopher, noticing today's events and Emily's behavior, seemed contemplative. "Don't lie, tell the truth," he demanded. Emily murmured in a small voice, "I left him when I went out with friends." Christopher pressed further, "Is that all you burdened her with? You didn't know Rothy was a pastry chef, did you? Then why did you ask her to make such a big cake? Surely you were trying to be mean to her." Emily turned red and fell silent at Christopher's words, caught off guard. Nicholas was flustered. "Apologize to Rothy," he said firmly to Emily. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she looked at me and murmured softly, "I'm sorry." Christopher then politely bid farewell to Dylan and me. "I'm sorry for the trouble my daughter caused," he said. "It's all right, we understand you're busy, but please come to visit sometimes," we replied, seeing off their parents-in-law. Regarding Rachel, it seemed Christopher was not involved. Emily had persuaded the manager to transfer her after I inquired about it. Learning the truth, Christopher disciplined the manager and Emily had to resign at his behest. Christopher, angry at her for disgracing him, later visited the store where I worked to apologize. He indeed seems to be a responsible person. Since then, Emily has been respectful and no longer belittles people. She seems to genuinely care for Ethan. Nicholas, unaware of her previous coldness towards me, was disillusioned after learning everything. It was the first time he scolded Emily. Emily realized her mistakes and became much more subdued, as if she had changed as a person. She probably had been acting as she pleased, misusing Christopher's influence and thinking herself important. Being reprimanded by her father and husband at her age was a humbling experience. While I inwardly chuckled at this, I felt relieved. Looking at the photo from that day, I naturally continued my part-time job. There was no longer the needless burden of unexpectedly taking care of Ethan, so it didn't cause any issues with my shifts. I've been enjoying my time as usual, going out with my part-time colleagues. Emily's attitude has changed. She no longer behaves as before and has even asked me to teach her how to bake cakes. I was genuinely happy about this. While it's not the mother-daughter relationship I had dreamed of, I hope to gradually build a good relationship with my son's wife. I want us to become a family that celebrates and watches over Aiken's growth together. Waking up to the presence of an ignoramus in the morning was akin to inhaling poison that would linger throughout my workday. Each sunrise brought with it the burden of enduring the condescension of an elite chief, a product of some lofty institution of higher learning. On a particular day, my tolerance reached its breaking point. Perhaps you should escalate your grievances to our superiors, she taunted. After all, I belong to the cream of society. Nobody will heed the complaints of a dropout like you. Her smugness was palpable, but a single encounter with the passing company president swiftly altered her demeanor. "Good day, I'm Daniel Smith," he introduced himself. "I landed a sales position at this company's branch straight out of high school. My father's motorcycle accident left him incapacitated, rendering him unable to provide for our family. So I opted to forgo college and joined the workforce to support them, thanks to a referral from my father." The camaraderie among the employees at this company made each workday a delight. My boss is kind, and my coworkers are a breeze to work with, so work-related stress rarely crosses my mind. Yet today, I can't shake off this feeling of melancholy. "Smith, isn't your meeting today with the head office?" a colleague inquired. "Yeah, it is." "Seriously, that means they'll be here, right? I should have taken the day off." "You don't interact with them directly, so just keep it to yourself. I'm already feeling down this morning." Before my colleague could continue, they abruptly changed the topic. "Why was nobody at the entrance to greet me? I was expected, and this is how they welcome me," they grumbled. "Forget it, let's just get to work," they muttered, then hurried away. "Remember that backstabber?" a disgruntled voice, now left with me, seethed. "This place is full of ingrates. It's infuriating that I have to bend over backward just to communicate with them. I sincerely apologize. I didn't anticipate your early arrival." She's Manager Jones, frequently commuting from headquarters for meetings and such. With a degree from a prestigious university, she was recruited as a seasoned executive candidate. Unfortunately, her demeanor often veered into arrogance, belittling employees at the subsidiaries. "They're all just typical uneducated incompetents," she'd sneer, making me look like a fool. "Let's just get this over with. Could you kindly wait a bit longer for another key person to join us? They're en route." "What? You expect me to wait?" My role is to hit the ground running upon arrival from headquarters. This incompetence is beyond belief. I deeply apologize. You're here 20 minutes ahead of schedule, yet you're being unreasonable. I yearned to retort, but the person on the other end was from the head office, an elite recognized by headquarters. I hesitated, unsure of the repercussions if I dared to challenge her authority. We grumble amongst ourselves at the subsidiary, but when it comes down to it, we never confront them, always enduring silently. As I carried on with my usual routine, driving to work one morning, I noticed an elderly lady in distress crouched in the middle of the road. It was clearly an emergency, but those around me either avoided involvement or didn't know how to react, feigning ignorance as they passed her by. "Are you all right, ma'am?" I rushed to her side, but she couldn't respond. Her breathing was labored, and she struggled to speak. "I'm calling an ambulance right away," I announced, swiftly dialing 911. Once the ambulance arrived, we all accompanied the elderly lady to the hospital. "It's all right for you to head home," the nurse reassured us. "We'll take care of her until her family arrives." Having already informed the company of my tardiness and concern for the grandmother's well-being, I opted to stay until her family showed up. Thankfully, her condition wasn't critical, and she was discharged after a few days. We breathed a collective sigh of relief. Then, a few weeks later, out of the blue, I received a transfer order to the headquarters branch office, a directive straight from the president. Contemplating the move, a colleague offered their perspective. "It's a testament to your hard work being recognized. Embrace it and give it your all." Encouraged by their words, I resolved to accept the transfer. My first day at headquarters proved to be quite the whirlwind. Deciding to greet each department individually, I encountered the chief in the corridor and hastened to offer my greetings, but she caught sight of me and shot me a disdainful glance. "What brings you here? Aren't you a bit out of your element?" "Good morning, Chief. I've been reassigned here." "Oh, you're being relocated. What on earth are they thinking?" Disregarding my greeting, the chief launched into a tirade. "Starting my day by sharing airspace with an uneducated imbecile is a surefire way to ruin my entire workday. I apologize if I've inconvenienced you, Chief. Please spare me the pleasantries. Just steer clear of me. I'm busy. Don't get in my way." Clearly in a foul mood, the chief dismissed me with a wave of her hand, as if shooing away bothersome insects. It was evident that any further attempt at conversation would be futile, so I resigned myself to returning to my duties. As I returned to the floor where the chief was, I overheard her berating her subordinate. "You're incompetent. How can you mess up something so simple? Even a new recruit could handle this." "I apologize, colleague." The employee, visibly distraught over her mistake, clenched her fists, lowered her head, and endured the scolding. "If this is how it's going to be, I'd rather have someone else working for me than you. You're no longer of any use to me. Clear out your desk and get out of my sight." With those cutting words, she turned to face me, our eyes meeting. Already discontented, her expression soared further as she glared at me. "Didn't I tell you to stay away from me this morning? Please, Chief, hear me out. I have something to discuss with you today." "Enough. Everyone here is arrogant. I don't have time for incompetent fools like you." With those words, the chief stormed out of the room, slamming the door with all her might. Concerned, I approached the employee who had just faced the chief's wrath, wincing at the resounding crash of the door. "Is this typical of the chief's behavior?" I inquired. According to the employee, it wasn't just typical, it was a daily occurrence. "She's always disrespecting me," he lamented. Worried that the chief might overhear, he hushed me, cautioning, she might hear you." Aware of the potential consequences if the chief caught wind of his complaints, I did my best to soothe his frustration. "I've endured this for too long," he confided, shuffling to his desk and retrieving a white envelope from a drawer. "Please don't tell me that's a resignation letter," I implored. "Unfortunately, that's exactly what it was," he confirmed, something he'd been contemplating for some time. "At my previous workplace, every day was serene and fulfilling. But ever since the chief arrived, it's turned into a nightmare," he lamented, tracing the surface of his desk with a heavy sigh. The clutter of documents and notes bespoke his dedication to his job, despite the upheaval. "I understand your frustration. It's disheartening to see your hard work undermined by just one person, the chief. I sympathize. You've poured your heart into this job, longer than she's been here, and you've excelled." But his frustration hung palpably in the air, with no outlet in sight. "The chief might say otherwise, but there are surely colleagues who trust and rely on you. Stay a bit longer for their sake. I'll help shoulder the burden. You're not the one who should walk away," I encouraged. "What do you mean?" he queried, his curiosity piqued as I made my way to confront the chief, leaving him pondering behind. "We can't allow any more employees to be mistreated like him. That's why I'm here," I declared, trailing after the chief until I found her in the break room, sipping tea. "Mind if I join you?" I inquired. The chief glanced up, her expression pained. "You're still here? You're as persistent as a fly." "I'm just trying to take a break. Please give me some space," she sighed wearily, likely drained from the recent confrontation. Summoning my courage, I addressed her firmly. "Chief, I'll be conducting a thorough investigation into your treatment of our employees. Depending on the findings, appropriate actions will be taken." My direct statement caught the chief off guard. "What are you implying? Are you trying to play the hero to shield incompetence?" "No, that's not my intention. Why don't you go run to your superiors with this? I'm an elite, you know. I have the backing of those above. Nobody will pay heed to a dropout like you from the subsidiary," she retorted dismissively, waving her hand as if to brush off the matter. Suddenly, a man emerged from the other side. "Smith, there you are. How's everything going?" It was the president. "I'm doing my best, thanks to your support." "Ah, hello, Mr. President. What a pleasant surprise to see you here. What happened to the grumpy chief from earlier? She's putting on a facade of excellence for those higher up the chain. I'm glad to hear you're thriving. Have you connected with the new branch manager?" "Huh? What new branch manager?" The chief looked puzzled, her gaze unfocused. "He's standing right in front of you. Hadn't you been briefed?" The president chuckled. This inept employee from a subsidiary company. You're quite the comedian, boss, the chief scoffed, joining in the laughter. The president, however, regarded her with suspicion. What are you talking about? Are you suggesting I'm joking? Understand this. He's now the brand manager of this branch office. It's impolite to label him incompetent, the president admonished. What on earth? The chief shot me a scowl. You didn't bother to inform me earlier, did you? I've already informed the rest of the department. Oh dear, such a rude and ill-informed individual. The chief's face flushed with anger, and she looked on the verge of collapse. Observing the situation with reluctance, the president finally spoke up. Let me shed some light on this remarkable opportunity. This company belonged to his father. Due to a car accident injury, his father couldn't manage it, so I took over. Is he the former president's son? The chief inquired. That's correct. I've been urging him to relocate to headquarters, but he's quite adamant about staying put, the president explained. I apologize. I have a fondness for that place, and I found it satisfying, I replied. What prompted your unexpected arrival here? Why did you just continue at the subsidiary? The chief interjected, momentarily forgetting the president's presence as she directed her query at me. The president, accustomed to seeing the chief in a more composed state, was visibly taken aback, his eyes widening in surprise. I made a heartfelt plea to him. He's my mother's savior, her benefactor, I clarified. What about the president's mother? The chief pressed further. Yes, the elderly lady I rescued a few weeks ago happened to be the president's mother. When he arrived at the hospital entrance and found me waiting for her family, I was surprised. I later learned that he was the one who had immediately come to her aid, calling for an ambulance while others ignored her. I felt he deserved better than being relegated to a subsidiary. So, you personally appointed him as branch manager, the president confirmed. That's correct, he nodded. I had my doubts about my qualifications when I was first appointed as branch manager, I admitted. Coming from a subsidiary, it was a sudden shift to leading at the head office. But after hearing from the president and receiving a call from my father urging me to support the company he had built, I made up my mind. That's precisely why I've appointed him as branch manager. Moving forward, I expect you to show him the respect he deserves and heed his directives, the president admonished the chief sternly before exiting the room. That's the explanation, chief, I reiterated as I faced her once more. You've been mistreating not only your subordinates but also those under your direct supervision. I understand the frustration and pain of being belittled simply because of lacking formal education. No. The chief collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face as her pride took a severe blow. It was no small shock for her to suddenly find herself outranked by someone she had long looked down upon for their perceived lack of education. She even threatened to have me dismissed. With that, my ordeal came to an end. The following day, a comprehensive investigation into the chief's conduct was conducted. Numerous employees and subordinates came forward with accounts of her egregious behavior. As a result, disciplinary action was taken. Upon receiving the news, the chief left the company without a word, her spirit seemingly drained. The chief appeared visibly distraught. Considering her high self-esteem, it was understandable. By the way, are you certain you want me to replace the chief? I inquired. I have full confidence in you, the president affirmed. With the chief dismissed, he appointed the individual who had previously endured her wrath. This employee had a long tenure with the company and showed unwavering dedication to their work. Naturally, I had thoroughly vetted his past performance, knowing he had first-hand experience of the frustrations and mistreatment under former Chief Jones. I knew he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes and would prove to be a compassionate leader who understands his employees' feelings, I explained. As for myself, I endeavored to approach my role from the perspective of the employees, not solely as a branch manager. Drawing from my positive experiences with a subsidiary I had previously worked with, I conducted regular interviews with staff, seeking their input. I also organized training sessions for employees in leadership roles, striving to foster a more supportive environment. Through these efforts, the company's culture gradually improved, resembling the positive atmosphere of the subsidiary where I began my career. Will Smith, I apologize for what happened with Jones, but thanks to your efforts, this company is thriving, the president acknowledged. Oh, I'm apprehensive, I admitted. At a later meeting, I found myself summoned to the president's office for a casual coffee chat. He wanted to discuss the recent developments in the workplace. I'm not getting any younger, eventually. I envision Will stepping into my role, the president shared. With all respect, Mr. President, I don't see myself as presidential material, I responded. Why not? Your father would have wanted the same, he countered. I aspire to remain aligned with the employees, working alongside them to support the company and engage with our customers. Once in the president's seat, that connection may become strained, I explained. The president frowned at my words before abruptly excusing himself. You have a unique sense of humor. Most would leap at the opportunity, he remarked upon his departure. Am I considered eccentric? I wondered aloud. No, it's refreshing. It's exactly the kind of mindset we need in a Smith, he assured, giving my shoulder a firm tap. You have a meeting coming up, don't you? Get back to work.
Just file for divorce. I don't want the kids. With those harsh words, my husband left the house, abandoning our 3-year-old twins and our newborn daughter. I had suspected he was cheating for some time, but between childcare and work, I had no energy to confront him. I can't do this anymore. Just then, one of the twins clung to me, saying, Mommy, we love you. Their worried faces looked up at me. Despite my anger towards my husband, something snapped in me at that moment. Well, I'll just file it, I thought. I signed the divorce papers with a smirk. He doesn't realize how much I've been supporting him. Unknowingly, he had begun his descent into hell. I'll be home late again. How many times have I heard that? My name is Iris. I'm 34. We got married 4 years ago. He was 2 years younger, which led me to spoil him at first. The following year, we had twin girls, and 3 years later, another daughter. His return home began to get extremely late around the time our last child was born. I hope the third one is a boy. I've always dreamed of playing catch with him. He was excited during the pregnancy, but his attitude soured as soon as he found out it was another girl. At the hospital, he grimaced upon seeing our newborn daughter. She doesn't look like me. She's not cute. Intense anger welled up inside me. How can you say your own child isn't cute? Maybe he was already considering divorce by then. Even after I came home from the hospital, his sulkiness continued. He barely helped with childcare. Show a little interest in the kids. If you're short on hands, hire a babysitter or something. You've got savings from your job. I worked at a top-tier company, earning significantly more than most women my age. On the other hand, my husband struggled to keep a job, often quitting before I even noticed. Perhaps he was envious that I was more successful at work. At the time, he was also doing temporary work, unsure of how long it would last. I didn't expect any financial support from him, but I wished he'd at least fulfill his role as a father. Spend some time with the kids at night, at least. What a hassle. When I asked him to help, he did it reluctantly and so poorly that the girls were bored. He realized they weren't warming up to him, which he didn't like, leading to a terrible cycle. Eventually, he stopped helping with the kids altogether. I'm tired from work. Let me rest on the weekends, he said. On weekends, he either stayed in his room or went out with someone. I have to work this holiday. If you don't watch the kids, I have plans too. See you. My husband left without listening to me. I couldn't leave the children alone, so I often had to find a babysitter at the last minute. If this continued, it would surely destroy our marriage and harm our children. Thinking this, I decided to talk to my in-laws the next day. That's just how husbands are. A wife needs to be patient. More importantly, could you do that thing we talked about last time? My visit to my in-laws ended with them ignoring my concerns and asking for favors. My parents live far away, so it's hard to visit them. I feel guilty even calling, not knowing who to turn to. Hey, make dinner. When I returned home in the evening, I was greeted by my husband in pajamas and a messy house. The kids, bored with their toys, instantly smiled upon seeing me. Where have you been all this time? I had to stop by the in-laws for a bit. Hurry up and make dinner. I'm starving. If you've been home all day, couldn't you do some laundry or clean the bath? Hearing this, my husband snorted in amusement. I decided not to do anything for someone who doesn't show gratitude. What do you mean? I cleaned the bath yesterday, and you didn't thank me. Didn't I say thank you? Not that. I mean, like, at least $100. He stretched out his hand, gesturing for money. What is he talking about? I must have looked distant, tired, and irritated. I pulled him aside to the bathroom so the kids wouldn't hear and retorted, I am working, doing the chores, raising the kids, everything, and you have never thanked me. That's a wife's job. Then what's your job? I work too. He barely earns $1,000 a month and does nothing around the house. Our argument lasted about an hour until, Mommy, I'm hungry. My daughter's call snapped me out of it. My husband left in a huff, but I ignored him and rushed to prepare dinner. During these tense days, I discovered something. My husband is cheating. I confided in a college colleague who had divorced due to her husband's affairs, and she advised me to gather evidence immediately. To tell the truth, I had noticed my husband's affair some time ago, just before our youngest was born. I noticed a sweet fragrance on him, like perfume. When I casually asked him about it just after he got home, he broke into a sweat and started stuttering. In addition to that, he was coming home very late, talking less and less, and his attitude towards the children was changing. There were many signs, including the disappearance of intimacy, but what really convinced me was a certain event. There was a lipstick in the pocket of your jacket. It's mine. My lips get chapped. You're using Chanel's pink lipstick? Maybe it's my mom's. His evasive answer sounded like a lie. Then, as he hurriedly said, I need a bath, and stripped off his dress shirt on the way to the bathroom, I saw it. What is that? I sighed. It was clearly a hickey in a place usually covered by clothes. I was about to confront him but immediately thought better of it and decided to gather evidence first. Take your time warming up. I smiled sweetly, pretending I hadn't seen anything. The next day, I came home late from overtime. My daughters were already asleep, and the room was wrecked in silence. We need to talk. Only the dining room light was on, and there he stood, holding a piece of paper. I can't take this anymore. Let's get a divorce. What? Just file for divorce. I don't want the kids. Without waiting for my response, he handed me the divorce papers and left. Mommy. The sound of the door closing woke up the twins, who looked at me worriedly. It's okay. Sorry for waking you. Though I told my daughters it was okay, it clearly wasn't. He's reached his limit? That's my line. And what does he mean he doesn't want the kids? Mixed emotions swirled in my head, and I hadn't even noticed the tears streaming down my face. Mommy, we love you. Sensing something, the girls hugged me tightly. At that moment, I came to my senses. I can't go on like this. I can't worry these little girls. I realized that as long as I have my children, I'm happy, and this is what I should have done from the start. Well, I'll just file it. When I said this with a determined look on my face, my daughters smiled, and we all slept soundly that night. The next day, I filed the divorce papers first thing in the morning and called a certain person. Yes, please go ahead with it. It's my husband who will have trouble. The person on the phone listened to my story and took action. This was something I had considered before. If my husband betrayed me, I would end everything we had been doing. If that ruins his life, it's none of my business. 3 days later. Iris, where have you been? Waiting for me as I returned from work were my in-laws and my husband. My mother-in-law was furious, my father-in-law pale, and my husband seemed clueless, dragged along without understanding the situation. Have you been waiting at the front door all this time? That's kind of creepy. This is no time for that. What is this? My mother-in-law thrust a letter at me. It's a notice from a lawyer. I can see that much. Her face was tomato red as she raised her voice. I need to pick up my daughters. So excuse me. Ignoring them, I went inside, but my furious in-laws followed me into the living room, insisting on a discussion. Why would you suddenly send this? I don't understand. You would understand if you read the letter, wouldn't you? Using a lawyer, how cowardly. Despite being in the wrong, my MIL's outrage was something else, mixed with irritation and confusion. I was constantly thinking about how to convey my feelings. Then my husband, who seemed to understand nothing, finally spoke up. Are you upset because I divorced you? Filing some kind of complaint? My in-laws looked at him, dumbfounded. Of course, he had no idea what I had done for them all this time. Hey, I didn't hear about any divorce. Is that why this is happening? Such a useless son. What are you two so anxious for? You've ruined everything. Wait, what are we even talking about? As the conversation between them went nowhere, I watched coldly as my MIL slammed the table. Why did you divorce, Iris? Well, my husband clammed up when things got uncomfortable. Since the conversation wasn't going anywhere, I decided to answer for him. He completely failed to fulfill his duties as a husband and father. There you go again. I told you that's just how men are, right? So you would forgive your husband if he had an affair? What? My MIL froze, clearly not expecting to hear that her son had been unfaithful. My husband tried to interject, but a sharp glare from me shut him up. Then, oddly, my FIL started defending his son. A man's affair is just a fling. It's not a problem. This is pointless. Please leave. All further communication will need to go through my lawyer. So what are you talking to a lawyer for now? You're agreeing to the divorce, right? My husband was confused, clueless about what was going on. Agreeing? I filed for divorce straight away. Then what is all this about? While arguing with my husband, my MIL suddenly started crying loudly. Paying $56,000 in one lump sum is impossible. What large sum? What are you talking about? Who's paying whom? Finally, the moment had come, time for my husband to regret. I proudly revealed what I had kept hidden until now. It was right after we got married 4 years ago. I was called to my in-laws' house alone, where my MIL said she had a serious matter to discuss. Nervous just because she was his mother, I was prepared to help however I could, but the words that came out of her mouth were shocking. I need $60,000, she said out of the blue, leaving me utterly confused. As I hesitated, she bluntly asked about my salary. Unable to withstand her pressure, I admitted it was over $100,000, and her eyes lit up. Apparently, my FIL had gotten into horse racing, losing big amounts without ever winning, and had even accumulated debt. Desperate for $60,000 to cover his debts, she pleaded with me, and I couldn't say no, repeatedly insisting she would pay me back. 4 years passed, and all I got back was just $4,000. There were times when she repaid some only to borrow again. If I don't do something, I will never be able to collect the full amount. So I hired a lawyer and filed a lump sum claim for the remaining $56,000 in full. My husband's jaw dropped when he heard this, and I almost laughed. But we said we'd pay back little by little. Why suddenly in full? We're no longer family, so I thought I shouldn't hold back. Then my MIL, with a screech like a monkey, turned her fury towards my husband. It's your fault for cheating, so you should be the one to pay it back. Huh? Why should I? We're not working anymore, and our pension won't cover it. If you want me to live in your parents' house, you'll do what I say. There was no way he could pay back $56,000 in one lump sum, especially since he was unemployed again at the time. I'll live at Kate's place, so I won't pay. That's the name of your affair partner. As I grew increasingly absurd listening to this family quarrel, I decided it was time to deliver the final blow. Don't think it ends with $56,000. I'm demanding $20,000 each from you and your affair partner as compensation, plus child support, of course. What? It's only fair, leaving your children to play around? Where's the proof I cheated? Had he forgotten so quickly about loudly declaring he'd live with Kate? Sighing, I handed him a pile of photos I had prepared for this moment. Looking at these made me sick. The photos were from his social media, showing him kissing and embracing his affair partner. Definitely a no-no, as confirmed by my lawyer. Why do you have these? A quick online search brought up your social media. It's amazing you thought it wouldn't be found. My naive husband had kept posting cheerful photos in a public setting. He probably continued to use social networking sites without knowing how horrible they were. I was surprised that he was doing this, being mechanically inept, but it made it easy for me to gather evidence of his cheating. Even my in-laws were dumbfounded, gaping at him. Please leave now. It's time to go to daycare. At least don't demand compensation from Kate. What if she runs away? That's not my problem. With no resolution in sight, I forcefully kicked the family out. Open this. Help me. I didn't know about the debt. I could hear my husband yelling through the door for a while. I'm calling the police, I yelled, and the three of them shrugged and left. A year has passed since then. After paying me the compensation, the affair partner disappeared. Because of this, my ex-husband had to live at his parents' home. where they incessantly demanded he cover the $56,000. He ended up borrowing from shady lenders. While he managed to pay that off quickly, he still owes $20,000 in compensation for the affair and $500 a month in child support. Now he earns his daily wage by doing manual labor from morning to night. The interest on his debt is ballooning, and it might be impossible for him to pay it off in his lifetime. But that's none of my business. Mommy, we're going to be late. Oops, my daughters are calling me to daycare. They're growing up so healthy and strong. That's all the happiness I need.